You know, I always thought the biggest battle in my life would be trying to fix my old pickup truck, or maybe just deciding what to grill on a Saturday afternoon. But I was wrong, dead wrong. The real war was fought right under my feet, in the dirt beneath my own basement, and it was started by the one person you'd least expect, my neighborhood's HOA president. My name is Marcus Reed, and for 22 years, my little ranch house on Willow Creek Drive was my sanctuary. It wasn't fancy, just 3 bedrooms, a comfortable yard, and a workshop where I loved to make sawdust, but it was mine. My neighbor, old Mr. Henderson, was the best kind of guy, the one who'd spot you a bag of mulch and never ask for the money back. Life was quiet, predictable, good, until the day Ms. Ophelia Thorne swept into office. Ophelia was a whole different animal, all tight smiles and bright cobalt blue blazers. She treated the Willow Creek Estates HOA like her personal kingdom. She carried that clipboard like it was a legal weapon, and I swear she had a calendar dedicated just to finding new rules to enforce. She once fined a resident because their bird bath was 3 inches too close to the street. 3 inches. I managed to stay off her radar for a while, but you know how these things go. The quiet life never lasts. The first direct strike was over my front porch tools. I'd left a simple garden trowel leaning against the rail while I went inside for a glass of iced tea, maybe 5 minutes, tops. I came back out, and there it was, taped to my door, a crimson violation slip. Equipment visible from curb. Immediate removal required, or $50 fine. It was so absurd, I actually laughed, but Ophelia wasn't interested in humor. She was interested in control. Then came her infamous Architectural Harmony Initiative, a fancy name for forcing everyone to repaint their shutters in one of 3 approved shades of grayish. Mine were a nice cedar tone, classic, subtle, totally harmless, but apparently not community cohesive. I ignored that one, too, and that's when the real trouble started brewing. She began her weird surveillance ritual. She'd drive past my house impossibly slow, her eyes scanning the foundation and the yard like she was a drone looking for a heat signature. Once, she just stood across the street for 10 straight minutes. No clipboard, just staring at my siding like she was calculating the cubic footage of my house. Looking back, I should have known then that she had plans far bigger than the color of my gutters. The real sign something dark was happening came during a poorly attended HOA meeting in the clubhouse, which always smelled faintly of burnt coffee and desperation. Ophelia droned on about holiday lighting standards for what felt like an hour, but then she cleared her throat and switched to the utility optimization project. She was talking about drainage pathways, modernized conduits, and improved land usage for the benefit of the entire estate, all very polished and vague. But then, she hit me with the line that shot me bolt upright. Some construction access will be required through the older easement zones behind certain properties, including Lot 44. That was me. I raised my hand. What kind of access, Ophelia? She gave me that smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes, just a tight, terrifying line. Oh, Marcus, just temporary work behind your property line. Nothing that affects your home. Can we see the detailed schematics? I pushed. They are, still under final review, she replied, instantly, too quickly. The red flag went up, and it was huge. Over the next few weeks, I noticed strange activity behind my fence. Fluorescent orange markings appeared, pointing not toward the street, but toward my house. I caught 2 men with surveying gear pacing my back boundary one morning. They just mumbled, HOA assessment, and drove off when I pressed them. That same night, the faint, rhythmic thump-thump-thump started. It was low, like a distant engine, and it felt like it was coming from under my foundation. The first crack appeared in the basement wall the next morning, a hairline at first, but it doubled in length by nightfall. Then the HOA sent a thick letter, not the usual flimsy violation, a structural integrity concern notice, stating that my house was a risk, and they strongly recommended a board-approved inspection. I knew it, a push to get inside, a setup. I refused access. 2 days later, Ophelia was on my doorstep. Marcus, I'm genuinely worried about your foundation. Are you? I said, blocking the doorway. My foundation was perfectly sound until about a month ago. She blinked, recovering fast. Well, things age, Marcus. So does common sense, but you don't see everyone losing it, I shot back. The smile twitched, and her lips pressed into a thin line. She tried to invoke some code section about being non-cooperative, but I just closed the door on her. As the lock clicked, a profound chill ran down my spine, because by then, the vibrations were so strong, the floorboards were actually trembling. The night I realized the true nightmare began with a thud so hard it shook a picture frame right off my living room wall. I rushed down to the basement. The air felt stale, warm, and there was a faint draft, like the house was breathing. I crouched by the growing crack, and the draft coming through was humid, almost like a hot exhale. I leaned closer, pressed my ear to the concrete, and there it was, tap, tap, tap. Someone, somewhere beneath me, was digging. I tried to rationalize it, called the city, called utility services. No one had any scheduled underground work. Nothing. They were doing this illegally, and in Willow Creek Estates, illegal usually meant HOA sanctioned. The next night, the noise was louder. I felt the rhythm of shovels. Then, another massive thud directly under my feet, and that's when I saw it. In the back corner, where the floor met the wall, the concrete was bulging upward, unmistakably. A small mound of fresh, damp soil had been displaced. I grabbed a trowel and started scraping, and within minutes, the dirt collapsed inward, revealing a gap the size of my head. Down into the darkness. A tunnel under my house. The rage was instantaneous, hot, and sharp. Ophelia had lost her damn mind. I wasn't waiting for my house to cave in. I needed to know what I was dealing with. I tied a rope to a support beam, looped my flashlight on my wrist, and squeezed myself into the void. The air got immediately warmer, thick with the smell of diesel and fresh earth. My boots crunched down, and I shone the light ahead. A narrow, crudely supported tunnel stretched forward. I followed it for maybe 30 feet, until it opened into a hollowed-out chamber, reinforced with planks. There was a generator humming softly, work lights clipped to rebar, and on a wooden crate, the motherlode, a rolled blueprint. I lifted it, my hands shaking. The stamp was undeniable. Willow Creek Estates HOA, Phase 2 Expansion Plan, authorized by Ophelia Thorne, President. I stood there, frozen. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was criminal. And that's when I heard them, voices echoing down the tunnel. I killed the flashlight and dove behind a stack of support beams, my heart hammering against my ribs. We're already under the slab of Lot 44, a rough male voice said. If this shifts, the whole thing could collapse. Then, that sharp, clipped voice of Ophelia Thorne. We don't have time for excuses. The sooner we get through this section, the sooner we can demonstrate the structural risk and move forward with the condemnation process. My blood ran cold. Condemnation. They were planning to declare my home unsafe, force me out, and take the land for pennies. Ophelia stepped into the chamber, wearing a ridiculous reflective vest over her cobalt blazer. Just finish this phase. Once the city inspector sees the stress fractures. She stopped. The blueprint was gone. Someone had moved it. Her flashlight swept the chamber, passing inches from my face. I held my breath, so tight my chest ached. Then, a tiny mistake. My boot shifted on the loose soil, and a single pebble rolled. Who's there? She barked. Richard, check that corner. Richard Hayes, the HOA's hired engineer, hesitated, fear in his voice. I was trapped. There was nowhere to go. Richard's flashlight beam skimmed past my boot by less than an inch. Nothing here, Delilah, he said shakily. Just a stone falling. But Ophelia wasn't convinced. Someone's been in this chamber. Someone moved my plans. She snatched the tube where I had set the blueprint back down. These weren't curled like this before. Delilah, seriously, you're tracking paper curl now? The stress meters are spiking. If we keep excavating. We proceed, she hissed. We need visible damage, and we need it soon, before Marcus Reed realizes. Her words trailed off, echoing around us. They knew I'd suspect, but they didn't. No, I was standing 10 feet away. Delilah, I'm telling you this is illegal on every level, Richard whispered, his voice full of fear and resentment. We have no permit. We falsified consent forms. If this goes bad, it's prison time. That, Ophelia whispered back, venomously, is exactly why you're not backing out, Richard. You're in this now. So, pick up your equipment. I had to get out. As they continued their low-voiced argument, I began to inch backward on my belly. Finally, my hand brushed the rope I'd anchored above. I was almost there when a clump of dirt slid under my knee and tumbled down the slight incline. Ophelia spun around instantly. There. Someone is definitely down here. Richard's flashlight swung, past the rope, and landed right on me. For one frozen heartbeat, 3 people stared at each other in a dirt cavern under a private residence. Marcus Reed, the supposedly helpless homeowner, Richard Hayes, the terrified engineer, and Ophelia Thorne, the queen of the HOA underworld. What the Keith? Richard blurted out. You have no business being here. Ophelia seethed. You're digging under my house. I shouted back, scrambling to my feet, holding the metal level I'd grabbed as a makeshift club. You are trespassing in an active construction zone. Trespassing under my own house. I almost laughed. You signed the easement authorization, she yelled. No, I damn well didn't. I roared, pulling the blueprint from my jacket. Because I found this. You broke the law, Ophelia. Multiple laws, and I'm betting the city, the county, and the state will be very interested in this. She took a step closer, lowering her voice, dripping with venom. Marcus, if you expose this, you'll create chaos for the entire community. You mean expose what you did to the community? I corrected. You will regret this, she whispered. Funny, that's exactly what I was planning to tell you. I turned, grabbed the rope, and climbed out with every ounce of adrenaline I had left. Below me, I could hear Ophelia screaming orders. Block that entrance. Seal it. He cannot leave with those documents. I collapsed onto the concrete, gasping, but I didn't stick around. I hauled myself up the stairs and jammed a chair under the basement door handle. The war had officially begun. I called Mr. Henderson first. He showed up 2 minutes later, took one look at me covered in dirt, and his jaw dropped when he saw the rolled-out blueprint on my kitchen counter. Keith, this is insane, he whispered. That's one word for it, I said. We need evidence they can't explain away. We spent the next half hour documenting everything with his GoPro. The cracks, the bulging slab, the access hole, and the damning handwritten note on the blueprint margin. Lot 44 sub-foundation weakened areas. Easier to influence inspectors' report. They wanted my house to fail. Next, I called an emergency structural engineer, Greg Saunders, and my attorney, Evan Turner, who specialized in civil disputes. Greg, the engineer, showed up first. He was a tall, weary man who looked like he'd seen too many 3 a.m. basements. He set up his sensors, scanned the floor, and just stood up, shaking his head. Jesus, this is a level 4 hazard. Potential risk of collapse. You cannot use this basement. I'm calling this in. The city will send inspectors within the next 24 hours. That was the key. Get the city involved, officially, before Ophelia could bury her mess. Evan Turner, my attorney, arrived later that morning. He listened without a word, his eyebrows climbing higher only when I mentioned the forged easement consent form. Keith, he said, folding his hands. This is a full-blown catastrophe for them. We have criminal trespass, fraud, forgery, unlicensed excavation, endangerment, structural sabotage, and maybe just plain insanity. He laid out the plan. Let the city do the official documentation first. Do not engage Ophelia. File a civil injunction immediately to freeze every HOA construction project she had planned. Right on cue, 2 city vehicles pulled into my driveway. Inspector Matthew Cole, clipboard in hand, didn't need convincing. When his assistant scanned the floor with ground-penetrating radar, the screen lit up with red and blue pockets, air gaps, disturbed earth, unsupported soil. There's a tunnel under here, Cole said gravely. A big one, I confirmed. Mr. Wood, Cole stated, this structure is not safe. We're issuing an emergency stop work order for the entire neighborhood until we determine the origin of this tunnel. And that was the moment Ophelia chose to show up. She marched right up to my door, cobalt blazer, clipboard, the whole armor. Keith, we need to speak. Evan Turner stepped beside me. No, you don't. Ophelia saw the city vehicles, the stern-faced inspector, and her composure. Fractured. This is HOA business. Mr. Wood is required to, Mr. Wood, Evan cut in calmly, is required to do nothing except follow city orders, which he is already doing. And you, Miss Thorne, are trespassing. Inspector Cole approached. Ma'am, I'm Inspector Cole with the City Building Safety Division. We've issued an emergency stop work order. Ophelia was speechless. Evan seized the moment. Miss Thorne will refrain from answering pending legal counsel. I looked her in the eye. You dug under the wrong house, Ophelia. She turned, marching down my driveway, her heels clicking like the ticking of a time bomb she had built herself. The injunction hit the courthouse an hour later. All HOA activities, frozen solid. Ophelia's immediate response was to come back to my door, pounding. I cracked the window 2 inches. You're trespassing on my property again. Leave. You cannot refuse an HOA compliance review, she shrieked. I can when the HOA is under criminal investigation. I shot back. Keith, she hissed, lowering her voice. If you don't cooperate, I will have no choice but to. But to what? I asked sharply. Dig a second tunnel. She froze. The board members with her exchanged looks of growing horror. Delilah, I said, using her first name to break her control. The city inspector already knows it was your tunnel, and my lawyer just filed a freeze on all HOA activity. You don't get notifications anymore. That was the end of her reign. The fallout was spectacular. The next morning, city inspectors, code enforcement, and the zoning compliance chief descended on the HOA clubhouse. Half the neighborhood was out watching. Ophelia, panicked, rushed outside, trying to intercept them. Miss Thorne, the zoning chief said, loud enough for half the block to hear. We need immediate access to all excavation plans and board vote documentation regarding recent underground activities. She shook her head violently. We weren't digging anything. There must be some misunderstanding. Then, Inspector Cole walked up, holding his report. It was traced to HOA equipment. We have photographic evidence. Cornered, furious, and utterly desperate, Ophelia made the final, fatal mistake. She yelled, not at the officials, but to the crowd. Fine. Yes, I ordered the tunnel. But it was for the good of the community. A dead silence fell over Willow Creek Estates. The zoning chief blinked slowly. Thank you. That confession will be added to the case file. I didn't try to hold it in. I just let out a breath that was half triumph, half relief. 20 minutes later, a black SUV rolled up, and Detective Harris, known for handling municipal fraud, stepped out. He approached Ophelia. Miss Thorne, I need you to come with me. She shook her head, tears forming. I've done nothing illegal. The community needs me. The community seems to disagree. The zoning chief responded dryly. As Detective Harris escorted her to the SUV, Ophelia passed me, her eyes narrowed with pure, distilled hatred. This is your fault, she whispered. I leaned in slightly, quietly. No, Ophelia. This is yours. The door shut. The SUV drove off. The entire HOA board was dissolved. The tunnel would be filled. The fraud was exposed. Detective Harris called me that evening. Mr. Reed, Ophelia confessed to authorizing the excavation and forging the easement consent form. You should know, your willingness to come forward prevented what could have been a structural collapse. You likely saved your own life. Saved my own life. Because Ophelia didn't care if my foundation gave way. She didn't care if I was inside when it happened. But I cared, and I fought back. My home is my sanctuary again. Not hollow, not shaking, just mine. The whole ordeal taught me something simple, but powerful. The things that threaten us most often happen quietly, beneath the surface, carved by people who believe their position gives them the right to control your life. But the moment you shine a light underground, the truth has nowhere left to hide. So, let me ask you, have you ever been pushed too far by an HOA, a neighbor, or anyone who abused their small slice of power? What did you do to fight back? Drop your story in the comments. I read every one of them. And if this journey gave you that little thrill of justice, make sure you subscribe so you never miss what happens in the next neighborhood meltdown.